Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers here in Korea and around the world, it's 9 a.m. on Wednesday, April 23rd here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom and you're tuned in to our ongoing coverage of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. It's now into the 8th day of search and rescue operations for possible survivors in the sunken Sewol-ho ferry. But so far, there has been no news of any survivors, while the death toll has risen to 128. The number of passengers missing now equals the number rescued, 174. Let's go live to our Hwang Sung-hee at the Paengmok-hang harbour, just 20 kilometres away from the accident site. Sung-hee, what's the latest?
Mark, a week has passed since the Sewol-ho ferry capsized and not a single survivor has been found. However, the confirmed death toll, like you said, is rising at a rapid pace and the number is now well over 100. Now, most of the bodies have been identified and many of them are students from Danwon High School, and still more than nearly 200 people, 174 people still remain missing inside the sunken ferry, and nearly 90% of them are believed to be high school students. Now, family members of the missing have been camping out here at the Paengmok-hang harbor, and they are growing restless about the wait. Even in the early hours of the morning, I saw many of them sitting by the shore, staring blankly into the water. Mark?
But this mission is still a rescue operation and they're continuing search operations. Has there been any progress?
Well, the rescue team did succeed in entering the vessel's cafeteria yesterday afternoon, more than a day after they secured a route there. Now, this is where many of the passengers were believed to have been at the time of the accident because it was breakfast time when the ferry started to list. The rescue team says they will focus their search on the third and fourth floors of the vessel. The fourth floor is where the cabins are, is another area that authorities expect passengers to have been when the ship capsized. More than 200 rescue boats, 34 aircraft, and some 550 rescue personnel will be taking part in today's rescue operations. This has been Hwang Sung-hee reporting from Paengmok-hang harbor.
Now, hundreds of divers have been very heavily involved in the search and rescue operations, and the harsh conditions they face have been well documented. Poor visibility, strong currents, and having to bring up the bodies of so many young students makes their work not only physically but extremely emotionally draining. Park Ji-won reports.
A rescue diver from the Korean Navy Ship Salvage Unit goes into the water with hopes of finding survivors or the bodies of the fallen. Under the surface, their visibility is limited. Pitch black really, save for an area about 20 centimeters in front of the divers' faces. The situation worsens at night. Despite the help of flares and lighting from fishing boats, divers can barely see, relying instead on distance lines or guidelines. Those lead them inside the sunken ferry and then back to safety. There are hundreds of divers on the scene, but each guideline can only be shared by 2 divers. In the early hours of rescue operations, just 3 or 4 divers were able to get into the water because just 1 or 2 guidelines were set up. High waves and strong currents also hampered the rescue operations in the first 48 hours after the accident, which is so-called golden time for rescue operations. After numerous failed attempts, divers finally got inside the ferry on the 5th day of the tragic accident with the help of 5 guidelines that were set up. With tighter currents and waves coming this week, search operations have accelerated. However, divers are still at risk. They face the risk of decompression sickness, known as diver's disease, which took the life of a Navy diver who was participating in search and rescue efforts following the sinking of the warship Cheonan 4 years ago. Despite such risks, rescue divers continue to go into the water with faint hopes of finding a survivor, even though it's now been days since the ferry sank. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
With the remotely operated underwater vehicles, or ROVs as they're commonly called, currently in operation at the site, they're not able to yield much progress in actual fact due to those strong tidal currents there. A domestically made robot, though, that can crawl along the bottom of the seafloor is set to be deployed, and hopefully this robot will be able to give rescue teams a better view of what's going on below the waterline. Our Son Jung-in reports.
This is a remote control robot crabster that can crawl along the bottom of seafloor. This 2.4-meter long, 2-meter high machine weighs 650 kilograms and moves using 6 legs. In the ocean, its weight reduces to 150 kilograms due to buoyancy, enabling it to explore the water with a maximum speed of 0.1 meter per second. Crabster is installed with a high-resolution scanning sonar, which helps it recognize objects that are within 100-meter distance. It can shoot and record its surrounding using an ultrasonic camera as well as 10 optical cameras, and can also collect samples using its long arms. Developed by the Korea Institute of Ocean Science and Technology in 2010, the robot will take part in the ongoing search operation at the Sewol-ho ferry disaster site. Crabster was made to be able to resist water currents that run up to 3.7 kilometers per hour.
Using scanning sonar, we can expect to receive more information on how the sunken ferry is capsized so that we can figure out the best way to rescue and salvage the vessel.
Unmanned submersible robots, or ROVs, from Korea and the U.S. were dispatched to the accident site, but have so far failed to gather any substantial results as they were affected by the currents. Unlike ROVs, experts hope this crab-like robot, which is able to withstand powerful currents, can help inspect the site and play an active role in the search operation. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
As the death toll from the tragic Sewol-ho ferry accident is on the rise, anger and frustration grows as the families of the missing and the victims demand to know why the captain and some of the crew fled the ship and failed to follow their responsibilities to look after their passengers. The one man with some of the biggest questions to answer is the captain. Investigators are looking into charging him with murder by omission. For more on this, we go over to our Gwon-soa at the news center. Soa.
Hi, Mark. As you probably remember, murderous was how President Park Geun-hye described the actions of the captain Lee Jun-seok and the crew members. And now, investigators are examining whether the captain could be charged with homicide by omission, which can be pressed in the case of death caused by inaction by the defendant. The joint investigation of prosecutors and police, as well as the Justice Ministry, said on Tuesday they will inspect the legal principles. Captain Lee is currently charged with 5 offenses, and they include negligence and violating ship crew law, which requires the crew to remain on the vessel until all passengers escape. Now, to be charged with murder by omission, Lee will have to be found guilty of willful negligence, meaning that although he didn't intend to kill the passengers, he didn't care whether they lived or died.
Yes, well, those are extremely serious charges the captain is facing there, and the operator of the Sewol-ho ferry is being probed very carefully as well and is under suspicion of a number of illegal activities and actions.
That's right, Mark. The National Tax Service launched a special probe Tuesday into 4 firms that are closely related to the ferry's operator, Cheonghaejin Marine Company, and imposed travel bans on 30 additional personnel related to the operator. Financial watchdogs have been looking into possible illegal foreign exchange trading and tax evasion by Yoo Byung-eun, former chairman of the company's parent firm, and his 2 sons. The family was banned from traveling this past Sunday. The Yoo family reportedly has more than $230 million worth of assets. And reports say former Chairman Yoo established 13 overseas corporate branches and used them to snowball the family's assets.
And so, with evidence and information coming to light over the past week, we can say this tragic accident is something that could have been avoided. But can you update us on all factors we know of that caused the sinking?
Sure, Mark. While a submerged rock was thought to have been the cause of the sinking in the early investigation stages, now we've got a clearer image of what happened. Renovations of the Sewol-ho ferry that was purchased from a Japanese company could have been the first cause, making it much heavier than before. Fast speed upon departure due to a delay and the much discussed over-veering of the ship were seen as the main cause of the sinking. In addition, ignoring safety guidelines was an issue too. Opposition lawmaker Kim Young-nuk released new inspection data Tuesday that said the ferry was overloaded with 3 times more cargo than it should have been. Now, I'll be back with more updates in our later newscast.
When the Sewol-ho ferry first ran into trouble, most of its passengers followed the instructions given to them by the ship's crew and stayed put inside the ship. This has confounded foreign maritime experts who say that decision and the indecisiveness on the part of the captain and the crew likely doomed hundreds on board. Yulian has the details.
Maritime experts describe the announcements on the Sewol-ho ferry instructing people to stay in their rooms at the time of the accident as totally incomprehensible.
In 99.9% cases, the crew is on top of it. They are well trained and they are able to evacuate the ship in plenty of time.
The retired Commodore says it is unacceptable that the captain completely failed in his duties to take control during the crucial moments after the accident.
Key decisions should be made within the captain's mind within 5 to 10 minutes. As soon as he gets a report from all departments of the ship and assesses how much damage is done to the vessel itself.
Logs show that the captain of the Sewol-ho ferry, Lee Jun-seok, delayed evacuation for at least 30 minutes after the ship began to capsize. Others say the announcement telling people to stay where they were actually made the situation worse. Mario Vittone, a former U.S. Coast Guard maritime accident investigator, says if those announcements were not made, the passengers would have gone to the deck to see what was going on. Thad Allen, the former head of the U.S. Coast Guard, also says common sense dictates that when a situation is deteriorating, the crew needs to give up on trying to save the ship and pour efforts into saving the passengers. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
This disaster has raised some serious questions about safety awareness here in Korea. Authorities have vowed to punish those responsible for the accident to the full extent of the law. However, records show that in Korea, those who violate maritime regulations are often barely punished at all. Connie Lee has this report.
Coast Guard officials flip over a boat after knocking on it in search of survivors. 7 crew members were found dead in this hit-and-run accident. This happened last year in March in the same waters where the Sewol-ho ferry incident took place. And just about 2 weeks ago, authorities caught 6 crew members under the influence of alcohol, steering a boat in the waters around Korea. But even out of the sea waters, more trouble. Last month, authorities found 17 sailors steering ships with illegal licenses. In the past 5 years alone, here in Korea, about 600 people were found dead or missing from maritime accidents, most of them caused by human error. From 2009 to 2013, there were about 1,400 accidents at sea. And out of those, 82% were caused by the crew. Safety violations and negligence were the cause for most of the accidents. Regardless, in those cases, the penalties for the crew would be considered light by most. Most of them were let off with just a warning, while others were suspended from work. Not a single one of the crew members had their licenses revoked. Year after year, light punishments for the many accidents in Korean waters. And now, with Korea's biggest maritime accident in decades at the fore, questions are being raised about whether it's finally time to take sea safety more seriously. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Now, as more and more bodies are brought to the surface at the accident site, a temporary group memorial altar has been set up to pay respect to the Danwon High School students who so tragically lost their lives in this ferry disaster. We now connect live to our Connie Kim, who is standing by the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall. Connie.
Hi, Mark. I'm currently standing by at the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall, which is about a 5-minute walking distance from Danwon High School. Now, as you can see behind me, many people are gathering up at this temporary memorial altar right now, as it is open to the public, all breaking out into tears. Now, the Education Office of Gyeonggi Province has opened up this temporary altar for the deceased, as it was difficult for them to arrange a group funeral for the deceased students. Now, on this day, Ansan citizens and volunteers have gathered together to lend a helping hand.
We think people from all over the world will come here today. About 100 volunteers are here to support the families of the victims. We are going to distribute food, drinks, and assist mourners.
As the families of the victims wish to hold the memorial altar for all of those who have passed, it will be set up at the Hwarang Recreation Park next week. Meanwhile, 25 of the deceased is scheduled to be released to their families in this morning from hospital and funeral halls in the city.
Yes, Connie, very, very sad. And we hear that some of the students that survived the accident have been or will shortly be discharged from hospital and are attempting to get back to their daily routine as much as they can, of course.
Right, about 80 to 90% of the survivors that were receiving medical treatment in the hospital will be discharged depending on their medical and physical status. Now, this according to the director of the hospital, who said that keeping the students in the hospital for too long will be another stress factor and will prevent them from recovering. Now, they will continue to get counseling sessions and medication if needed as well. Danwon High School, which was temporarily closed, will reopen Thursday for students that were not on board the Sewol-ho ferry, while survivors still receiving medical treatment may take classes and counseling in the hospital. This has been Connie Kim reporting live from Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall.
1 week has passed since the ferry sinking and no additional survivors have turned up, only bodies. The public is nonetheless showing its support and keeping hope alive, and a yellow ribbon movement in the online community is symbolizing that great hope. Paulie has more.
This simple image of a yellow ribbon bow has become a symbol of hope in the wake of one of Korea's deadliest maritime disasters. Its message of one small movement that can lead to big miracles has resonated with people across the nation. The Yellow Ribbon Campaign of Hope was first started by a university student club, urging people to unite in their support for those affected by the tragic accident.
It began as a logo being distributed as a KakaoTalk wallpaper, but it spread to other aspects of everyday life that we can see, like tying a yellow ribbon or string on your backpack. Keeping them in your thoughts is also good.
The Yellow Ribbon Campaign has spread online across social networking services such as KakaoTalk, Twitter, and Facebook, with international celebrities and professional athletes also joining in to express their support for the victims. Meanwhile, the story of Park Ji-young, a 22-year-old crew member, has deeply moved the country. According to survivors, Park had refused to take a life jacket and instead kept trying to save passengers till the very end. Her body was one of the first to be recovered from the wrecked ship. An online petition has now attracted tens of thousands of signatures, calling for the government to designate her as a martyr. Once legally recognized for her sacrifice, Park's family will receive financial compensation and benefits, while her body may be buried in the National Cemetery.
Certificates issued by hospital-level medical institutions or police records to prove her actions are most important. In addition, identification documents from fire departments and other authorities are also required.
The Health Ministry says once it receives a formal application for Park, officials will promptly examine her case for review. Paul Yi, ARIRANG News.
With US President Barack Obama arriving in Seoul this Friday, there had been speculation North Korea was preparing for a fourth nuclear test. However, the US-based North Korea analysis site 38 North says that, based on satellite imagery of the Punggye-ri nuclear test site, a nuke test is unlikely during Obama's visit to Asia. The website goes on to say that recent operations at Punggye-ri have not reached the high level of intensity in terms of vehicle, personnel and equipment movement that occurred in the weeks prior to past detonations. It also says other possible indicators present before the North Korean nuclear tests in 2009 and 2013, such as communications vans and a satellite dish intended to transmit pre-test data, have not been spotted. Experts speculated recently that a fourth nuclear test could be in the works ahead of or during Obama's visit to Tokyo and Seoul this week. And on the eve of President Obama's trip to Japan, a group of nearly 150 Japanese lawmakers paid their respects at the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine, where convicted Class A war criminals are laid. The visit by a group of lawmakers from several parties and at least one cabinet minister to mark an annual spring festival drew strong rebuke from Korea, a country forced under Japanese colonial rule in the early 20th century. Korean Foreign Ministry spokesperson Jo Tae-young described the visit as deplorable and an act that undermines stability in the region. Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said earlier that the visits were an individual matter of personal religious freedom and not something the government should interfere with.
Let's get an update on the weather conditions in Jindo and around the country. As of about an hour ago, the waves have been remaining calm at 0.6 meters and winds are blowing at 3.5 meters per second, and water temperature is about at 11.5 degrees Celsius. And underwater visibility will greatly improve when the current flows are at their slowest. Well, we have three opportunities at 9:13 a.m., 3:30 p.m. and 8:35 later in the day. The speed of flow should decrease 1 hour before and 1 after these indicated times. While the speed of tidal currents went down to their slowest since neap tides started from yesterday, and which should last till tomorrow, Thursday, and it's been boosting the rescue and search operations over at the site. And it looks like temperatures will be tad higher than yesterday over in Jindo, reaching up to 22 degrees Celsius under lots of sunshine. And as for the rest of the country, we'll continue to have early summer-like conditions with temperatures hiking about 2 degrees higher than yesterday. So high in Seoul will rise to 24 degrees Celsius under lots of sunshine. Well, that's all I have for you at this hour, but I'll be back with more updates after 10.
Thank you very much, Gian. We'll have more updates for you. Those are the updates we have for you at this hour. Just to say, 5 more bodies have been retrieved from the accident site, bringing the confirmed death toll now to 133. We'll have another special newscast in about half an hour's time as we continue our extended coverage of the search and rescue efforts. You can also find more information on our website, arirang.co.kr. Goodbye.